Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at something really fascinating, China's chip industry. Specifically, how it's dealing with some pretty hefty U.S. sanctions aimed at slowing down its AI progress. But despite all that, there seems to be this wave of, well, optimism and real movement coming out of China.
Exactly, and that's what caught our eye. Recent reports suggest that, far from being stopped in their tracks, Chinese chip companies are showing quite a bit of adaptability. Real innovation, actually.
Right.
So for this deep dive, we're digging into a recent article that really highlights some of these maybe unexpected advancements.
Okay.
Our mission, if you like, is to get past the headlines. We want to understand what's really developing, where China's genuinely making ground, what hurdles are still there, because there definitely are some, and, what this all might mean for the bigger picture, for global tech competition.
Okay, let's get into it then. The article kicks off with a pretty startling example.
Cambricon.
A Chinese chip designer. Apparently, their share price absolutely rocketed over the last year. Way more than even a giant like NVIDIA. What's behind that? What does that signal?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? It's not just the percentage jump, though that's eye-catching. It might signal, a shift in investor confidence.
Confidence in what?
Maybe a belief that smaller players like Cambricon are actually well-placed to benefit from this new landscape. Perhaps they're finding niches. Or maybe their tech is just seen as a viable alternative now that the big international options are harder to get. It definitely suggests things are changing, that investors are seeing potential in these Chinese companies in a new way.
Yeah, dynamic is the word. Okay, let's set the stage a bit more. These U.S. sanctions, they're designed to stop China getting the most advanced chips, right? And the tools to make them, especially for AI.
That's the goal, yeah.
We even saw NVIDIA's H20 chip, which was meant to kind of comply with earlier rules, get blocked in the end. But the article says China's AI labs, they don't seem to be running out of chips. How does that work? How are they getting around these pretty serious restrictions?
It looks like it's a couple of things happening at once. First, there's actual genuine innovation happening inside China.
Okay.
The article mentions DeepSeek, an AI startup. They have apparently made some real breakthroughs in making their AI models need less computing power.
So doing more with less, essentially.
Exactly. It's significant because it means you might not need the absolute bleeding-edge hardware to get good results. Kind of like finding a smarter, more efficient way to compute.
That's clever. Making the software work harder if the hardware is restricted. What's the second reason they seem okay for chips?
The second thing the article talks about is, well, it calls it a shadowy supply chain.
Okay. Sounds intriguing.
Yeah, the details are obviously murky, but it suggests there are, let's say, unofficial routes for getting hold of technology like NVIDIA's, even with the sanctions.
So middlemen, gray markets.
Could be intermediaries, maybe re-exporting chips through other countries. It just shows how hard it is to completely seal off these supply chains when the demand is there.
Right. Okay, so there are workarounds. But beyond that, Chinese companies themselves seem to be pushing forward. Huawei's Cloud Matrix chip cluster gets a mention. It supposedly outperforms NVIDIA's NVL72 by linking up, what was it, a huge number of their own chips.
Yeah, 384 of their Ascend AI chips. And the NVL72 is basically NVIDIA's top-tier system for connecting multiple GPUs for really heavy AI tasks.
So for Huawei to build something competitive using their own chips that reportedly beats NVIDIA on some tasks, that's a big step.
It really is. It shows progress not just in chip design, but also in how you connect them all together efficiently. Now, there is a trade-off mentioned: higher power consumption.
Okay, so more performance, but needs more juice.
Potentially, yeah. But the performance claim itself is the key takeaway here. It's a statement.
And it seems it's not just Huawei making moves. The article says other Chinese firms are developing chips aiming to replace NVIDIA's A100.
Right. The A100 has been a real workhorse chip for AI everywhere.
And Cambricon is apparently already shipping its alternative, and Hygon is about to.
That's what the report suggests. Cambricon delivering, Hygon finishing testing.
That feels significant, like direct competition emerging.
It absolutely is. Having multiple domestic options for a key chip like the A100, that shows China's high-performance computing ecosystem is maturing. It means less dependence on one foreign supplier, obviously, but also potentially drives more innovation locally, maybe even brings prices down eventually.
Okay, so processors are one thing. What about memory, specifically high bandwidth memory, HBM? That's crucial for AI chips, right?
Totally crucial. It's like the super fast highway for data getting into the processor. And yeah, historically, South Korean companies SK Hynix, Samsung, and Micron from the US have dominated HBM.
And the article notes the U.S. started restricting HBM sales to China last December. So another potential squeeze. How's China dealing with that?
Well, recognizing it's a potential bottleneck, Chinese companies are trying to step up. The article points to a company called CXMT.
CXMT.
Okay.
They're reportedly making rapid progress developing their own HBM tech. Now, they might not be at the same scale or, the absolute cutting edge as the big players yet.
But they're moving fast.
Exactly. Showing progress in such a specialized area is definitely a positive sign for China building a more self-reliant supply chain.
It really does feel like they're tackling multiple parts of the puzzle at once. Not just designing chips, but also the incredibly complex machines needed to make the chips. We're seeing progress there, too.
Yes, definitely. That's another key area highlighted. AME, for example. They've apparently unveiled an etching tool for NAND memory chips.
And etching is?
It's a critical step in carving the circuits onto the silicon. And this specific type of tool was pretty much a monopoly for Lam Research, an American company.
Ah, so breaking a monopoly. And there was another example.
Yeah, Nora. They've developed a technique for layering silicon germanium onto wafers. That's another process step that's been dominated for a long time by Applied Materials, another U.S. giant. And didn't the article quote someone saying this progress in equipment might be happening faster than expected?
That's right. Lin King-Yuan from Bernstein. The quote suggests the speed of these developments is maybe surprising even the experts.
Wow. That really emphasizes the determination, doesn't it?
It really does. It shows focused investment and, frankly, intense effort in China's semiconductor equipment sector. Because, look, these breakthroughs directly tackle a major dependency. Every advance here reduces that reliance and builds up their own capabilities.
Okay, so progress seems undeniable in several areas. But the article also uses this term, semi-independent, that suggests, well, not fully independent yet. Where are the big dependencies still?
That's the crucial qualifier, isn't it? Semi-independent. Because yes, while there's progress, full self-sufficiency is still quite a way off.
How so?
Well, for one, the article notes that a lot of the buyers for these new domestic chips are state-owned enterprises, which suggests, maybe some government nudging is helping drive adoption.
Okay, not purely market-driven demand yet.
Perhaps not entirely. And then there's the analysis from SemiAnalysis, which apparently found that even Huawei's advanced Ascend 910C chip still uses quite a few components supplied from overseas.
Right, so still relying on a global supply chain for parts. And what about the really fundamental stuff, the manufacturing itself? The article mentions lithography, right? ASML.
Yes, that's arguably the elephant in the room. Or maybe the biggest elephant. Lithography. Specifically, the extreme ultraviolet or EUV lithography machines made by ASML.
A Dutch company.
Correct. And they basically have a monopoly on these EUV machines. You absolutely need them to make the most advanced chips, the tiniest transistors, the most complex patterns for cutting-edge AI processors.
And China can't buy these?
No. U.S. export controls effectively block ASML from selling their latest EUV tools to China. And currently, no one else, including any Chinese company, can make anything comparable.
So that's a hard wall for making the absolute best chips domestically.
It's a massive bottleneck, yeah. It limits China's ability to independently manufacture chips at the most advanced process nodes, like 3 nanometer or below.
Which also affects who can make chips for them. TSMC in Taiwan, the world leader, they're also restricted by the U.S. from making advanced chips for Chinese firms.
Exactly. Which leaves SMIC, the main Chinese foundry, as the primary domestic manufacturer for advanced logic chips.
And how does SMIC compare?
They've made impressive progress moving down to processes like 7 nanometer, reportedly, but they're still considered a generation or two behind TSMC's leading edge.
Okay.
The article also mentions that SemiAnalysis report again, suggesting a potential workaround where Huawei might be trying to buy TSMC wafers through a third party, though importantly, both Huawei and TSMC strongly deny that.
So lots of maneuvering, denials.
Yeah.
It's complex.
Very high stakes, definitely.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly. Hardware is one thing, but what about software? The article talks about NVIDIA's CUDA platform being the standard for programming AI chips. How does China stack up there?
Yes, software is absolutely critical. You can have the best chip in the world, but if it's hard to program or doesn't have good tools, developers won't use it.
And CUDA is good.
CUDA is more than good. It's powerful, relatively easy to use, and crucially, it has this huge ecosystem of developers, libraries, and tools built up over years. It's a massive advantage for NVIDIA because it locks people into their hardware.
So what's the Chinese alternative? Huawei has something.
Yes, Huawei developed its own platform called Canon specifically for their Ascend chips.
Okay, so there is an alternative. But
The article suggests CNN has some pretty big challenges. It's reportedly years behind CEDA in terms of features and maturity.
oh,
And apparently it's had issues with bugs, which has led to, well, let's just say local tech experts aren't exactly rushing to embrace it. Maybe some apathy there.
that sounds like a major barrier to getting widespread use of Huawei's chips, even if the hardware is good.
It absolutely is. Building that software ecosystem with the tools, the libraries, getting developers comfortable and productive, that takes a long time and a huge amount of sustained effort. If Canon feels clunky compared to CUD, it really slows down adoption. Bridging that software gap is probably just as important as closing the hardware gaps.
Right, so summing up the challenges. Still some foreign component reliance, the massive lithography hurdle with ASML, and this significant software ecosystem gap with CEDA.
That seems to capture the main ones, yes.
Okay. So despite all the progress we talked about earlier, there are clearly still big obstacles. But the article ends on a more positive note for China, highlighting a shift in attitude.
This is quite interesting.
It suggests that before the really tough sanctions hit, Chinese tech firms were maybe a bit hesitant to use homegrown chips, worries about cost, reliability. They preferred the known quantities from NVIDIA or others.
Yeah, the established, proven solutions.
But now, the thinking has apparently changed. Using domestic chips isn't just an option, it's seen as crucial for, well, survival. There's more willingness now to take a chance on the local players.
And that change in mindset could be incredibly powerful. It's almost like the sanctions, ironically, have forced the issue. They've created a guaranteed, motivated domestic market.
Right.
This increased demand, this willingness to work with local chip makers, maybe provide feedback, iterate, even if the first versions aren't perfect. That's exactly the kind of environment that can accelerate innovation and improvement. It fuels the whole domestic ecosystem.
So pulling all these threads together from our deep dive, the picture that emerges is a Chinese chip industry that's definitely not standing still. It is making rapid, impressive progress on multiple fronts.
Yeah, you see it in processor design with Huawei and others, in memory like HBM with CXMT, and even in the really tough area of manufacturing equipment with AMEC and Nora, there's tangible evidence.
At the same time, though, we absolutely have to acknowledge those major dependencies that remain. That semi-independent label feels pretty accurate.
Absolutely. The reliance on ASML for cutting-edge lithography is huge. The fact that even advanced domestic chips still need foreign components, that's significant.
And the software side. The challenge for Huawei's Canon to really compete with the entrenched dominance of NVIDIA's CEA. That's another major factor.
Can't underestimate that.
This has been a really illuminating look at such a fast-moving area.
Yeah.
And it really leaves us with a final question for you, the listener, to think about.
Yeah.
Given the speed of innovation we're seeing, this clear determination within China's tech sector to become more self-reliant, how do you think these remaining dependencies, lithography, software, components, might change over, say, the next 5 or 10 years?
And maybe more importantly, what kind of unexpected shifts could that cause in the global balance of tech power? Something to definitely keep an eye on.
Indeed. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.